circulated to all members, and I'm assuming it has been circulated. And I'm not going to address the issues in that because the points that they raise are around health issues, around incineration, and they were dealt with appropriately at the planning committee stage, Chairman. I am aware that there has been an additional letter that's come in rather late, and that is from the MP for Harrogate, Andrew Jones MP, and I will address that, Chairman, because I believe that that has been tabled to members today. Before I conclude, I will come to that particular one. Chairman, I thank all the people who've raised questions today. It's been very helpful, and no doubt it will contribute to the debate, and I thank them for letting me have plenty of time to actually consider these over the weekend so I can give very much a detailed response to those points. There have been a number of themes running through every speaker today, and I think before I actually go into individual speakers, I would like to pick up on some of those trends, those themes. One of those is numbers and sensitivities. More than one statement has used numbers taken from the report presented to the executive. The figures themselves are the council's figures, so I'm not going to challenge them, but I do need to pick up the selective use of these figures in a way that is misleading. Costs of the contract life are being quoted in the same breath as net present value figures, and future costs of the entire waste service are being represented as contract costs. Anybody reading the report will understand the reality, but for the sake of the record, I need to clarify just a few points. 1.4 billion represents the future cost of the entire waste service. That is dealing with our waste that will come into the stream, and we can't ignore the fact is the waste will always be there. If the project continues, with it that will be, with it the total cost, and not the cost of the contract with Amy Sester. The report makes it quite clear that the net cost to the councils of AWRP is £728 million, not 1.4 billion, Chairman. The combined cost of the waste PPP will be more in the first 7 years, but will cost less than the alternative, from only 8 years into the contract, not 15. The impact on both councils of a 0.5% reduction in the assumed level of inflation is to reduce value for money by 50 million over the life of the contract, from 169 million to 119 million. Mr. Boyle and Mr. Schofield are therefore wrong in their assertions that this level of reduction would mean the project was no longer value for money. It will still present value for money, Chairman. Net present value is a mechanism for sense-checking the value for money assessment, taking into account the time value of money. NPV numbers are not comparable with nominal numbers and shouldn't be used together, as we've heard today. Bearing the points I've just mentioned in mind, Mr. Whelan's comments that we are proposing to commit 1.4 billion in order to achieve £17 million benefit is more accurately rephrased as committing 728 million to deliver 132 million of benefit. This gives a very different impression, so it is important that we do not confuse or mislead anyone with these numbers. Comparisons with alternatives. There is a request in a number of the statements to compare the proposal for Allerton Park with rail alternatives. Some may interpret this to suggest that we haven't tested AWRP against the market, but this couldn't be further from the truth. The decision taken in 2010 to award the contract to Amy Sester followed a thorough competitive procurement process where AWRP was chosen as the preferred solution after being tested on a like-for-like basis with 17 other solutions offered from 10 other bidders. AWRP was evaluated at that point to be the solution that best met our needs. AWRP has been thoroughly tested against rail alternatives on a like-for-like basis. Landfill. A number of the statements have queried the use of landfill as the proxy for an alternative solution. The value for money assessment uses the predicted cost of landfill in place of any certainty on the cost of a long-term alternative. This does not mean that landfill is assumed to be the long-term alternative, and I think there's some confusion there. But the cost of the future alternative is likely to be comparable to the cost of landfill, predominantly landfill tax. This is based largely on information from a recent soft market testing exercise which asked contractors and local authorities whether they would be interested in providing an alternative, what their proposal would look like, how much it was likely to cost. This process indicated that there is a market interest and that landfill plus landfill tax is the benchmark that the market is likely to price against. Current spot market gate fees in some cases may be lower than landfill, but are not comparable to AWRP. Spot prices are not suitable as a market proxy because they do not offer the same protection on long-term guarantees that we have secured with AWRP. Using landfill as the proxy is reasonable and it's prudent in these circumstances. Risk. Another common comment in the earlier statements was about risk. It is suggested that continuing with AWRP exposes the Council to unacceptable levels of risk. The reality is that there are real risks in abandoning this project and starting again, and they are real, Chairman. To continue, give the Council control and certainty. We will know what the cost of waste management will be for the next 25 years, and we can be certain that waste will be disposed of locally and responsibly. We need to be clear on this point. To abandon the project is to gamble that the alternative will be cheaper and better. No one can guarantee that, and the only way to find out would be to test the market by conducting another competitive procurement. The real risk is what we get back could be more costly and less sustainable than the option that is currently before us. The responsibility of members has been alluded to, Chairman, and we have heard that Allerton Waste Recovery Park is not wanted by the local parish and borough councils, and Sir Graham Hall and other speakers referred to the need for members to act responsibly. No member here would want to do otherwise, but the responsibilities of members is to the wider public of North Yorkshire today and in the future. It is our job to make decisions in the best interest of all the residents, not just one group or area. I have to say we do value the contribution of those interests because it helps focus our minds, particularly those who will be affected by our decisions. But it's our job to decide matters for the greater good of the wider community. And it would be nice only to take decisions that everybody could agree with, but then we wouldn't take any decisions at all, would we? I think it's worth saying as well, around the responsibility of members, Chairman, is that all members have had extensive exposure to this process, fully understood it, and it's only 2 weeks ago that we had a very intensive presentation going through all the facts, the alternatives and the numbers. So I do believe is that the elected members in this chamber are well positioned to actually take an informed decision on this, whichever way they decide they want to go. I'll turn to each of the questions in turn. And you'll have to forgive me because I think the process of speakers coming forward has been somewhat changed. But I'll start with Sir Graham first. Sir Graham posed 6 questions, and I will respond by saying actually yes to them all. AWRP is the final piece in the delivery of our local waste strategy and will contribute towards delivery of national and EU waste directive targets for recycling and diversion from landfill, and also help us keep the lights on. Yes, we have looked at all the options put to us, and as I said earlier, we have reviewed this project against a theoretical market proxy to provide additional comfort that it presents long-term value for money. Yes, it does use modern state-of-the-art technology and offers flexibility in being able to deal with changes in recycling or waste collection requirements. And whilst it is state-of-the-art technology, Chairman. It is tried and tested technology. Yes, it represents value for money, using the Treasury Green Book advice for public sector appraisals of long-term investment projects. Yes, to proceed is, I believe, the right use of our limited resources. We have a statutory duty to dispose of waste, and the proposal today will reduce our long-term costs for this service and effectively manage our exposure to risk. And yes, this is a shovel-ready project where the funders, the contractors are all in place and waiting. I recognise that some, like you, are opposed to this project, but as I have said, it is our job today to make decisions that are in the best interest of the majority. Having read the report and seen the evidence for myself, I believe it is in the best interest of the majority to proceed with this project. Mr. Wright, you refer to a changing environment and uncertainty about whether we will be in the EU in a few years' time, and I'm sure we all share that view from certain elements of the floor. I wouldn't comment on the EU, but I will go as far as to say that the landfill tax is the UK's main mechanism to implement the EU landfill directive. And I cannot see the UK government waiving what is, I have to say, is a very lucrative income stream on local government and local council taxpayers. You will also seem to suggest that we should be looking at continuing with landfill as an option. Personally, I find that incredible because, in actual fact, government is saying is landfill is totally unacceptable. It is actually considered as the most polluting and least sustainable method of waste disposal and is financially more expensive in the long term. Landfill really isn't a realistic long-term solution. Your question is why we don't use spare capacity elsewhere. It is generally accepted there is currently a shortfall in capacity in the UK to meet 2020 targets. As I've just said, we can't rely on landfill for the future either. Neither should we rely on exporting our waste. I accept that there is currently excess capacity in some parts of Europe, but we should take responsibility for our own waste, and I think you will find that the Department of the Environment, in conjunction with other EU countries, actually turn around and say there is a social responsibility to deal with your own waste and not to export it. I have explained that the proposal we have to decide today is whether to proceed or to abandon this project and terminate the contract with Amy Sesper. To choose not to proceed is to take a gamble, and that we can find an alternative that is cheaper and better. The difficulty is this cannot be guaranteed. Ms. Potter, you also seem to advocate the continued use of landfill. I think I have addressed that in my last response. You also refer to the need for infrastructure to meet the demands of new housing. I'm glad that you've actually raised that because it is an important consideration. We expect and are planning for growth in the county. New homes put increasing demands on transport, health and education. But also, every new home will have a bin. So we need to plan for the waste infrastructure as much as roads and schools. AWRP will be able to cater for this growth over the next 25 years. However, your question was specifically about sustainability and increases in traffic. The environmental impacts of all the proposals put to the Council in 2010 were evaluated comprehensively. This included measuring the impacts of transport, the environmental impact, measured in terms of global warming potential, or the CO2 equivalent, and this was the largest single category in the tender evaluation and contributed to the overall 60% weighting given to the environmental and quality considerations. I can assure you that sustainability and transport impacts associated with AWRP have been fully taken into account. However, it is worth bearing in mind that the alternative options being proposed by speakers today will have transport implications. AWRP is, quite rightly, right in the centre of where the waste originates. Moving it to the boundary or outside the county will create a transport burden and almost certainly add considerable cost and environmental impacts. It is important that these facts are recognised. Mr. Schofield, I believe I've already addressed the points you raised on the value for money of the waste PPP and the risks of proceeding. Your question asks for a delay in the decision pending a comparison with rail alternatives. Mr. Schofield, that was the report that I indicated earlier that the Council considered in 2010. The only way to compare options in the way you suggest is to invite competitive tenders. We have done that and concluded that Allerton Waste Recovery Park is the best option. Mr. Whelan, again, I have already commented on your selective use of figures, and you also make points about risk, which I believe I have covered. Similarly, you refer to the use of the market proxy, which I commented on early. You make a reference to dubious contract and uncertain results, which I need to address. The contract is robust and detailed. It is based on a Treasury standard form of contract and has been assessed as providing an effective balance of risk between the public and the private sector. It is not dubious, and neither are the results uncertain. The contract guarantees performance and will allow us to be confident that our waste will be managed efficiently and in an environmentally friendly way. Results are guaranteed. But I do have to take an exception, Mr. Whelan, that your comments about our officers, that they have manipulated figures. Your words is, in our view, they have manipulated numbers to prove the AWRP is viable. This sounds less like transparency and more like a cover-up. Given your misleading representation of the figures in your statement, I think, Mr. Whelan, you really need to reconsider that particular statement. Making such claims actually denigrates the value of this debate, and it actually taints the entire argument against AWRP. Our officers act at all times with the utmost professionalism, and I cannot let you comment on that matter and let it go unchallenged. As far as I'm concerned, is our officers are professional, their integrity isn't questionable. With it, they have a long track record of advising elected members in this chamber openly and honestly. Your question is addressed to the leader, but thankfully the leader has delegated for him this responsibility to me. And yes, I do believe that investing money in the short term to bring long-term benefits is the right thing to do. Mr. Singleton, you call for a detailed and comparative evaluation of options. I have explained that this is what informed our decision in 2010. We know AWRP is the option that best meets our needs. The debate today is whether we continue or start again. As with Mr. Whelan, you suggest the benefits of the contract are questionable. As I have said, the benefits are real. AWRP will divert waste from landfill. It will create additional jobs and help stimulate the local economy. It will generate electricity, and it will provide certainty and security for the long term. The project is value for money, both over the life of the contract and in NPV terms. Your question is perhaps the most pertinent and is the question all members must consider in today's debate. Do we want to continue with the waste PPP or carry on with short-term measures while we develop an alternative long-term strategy? I believe you will know my opinion on this, but each member will have to make up their own minds on that issue. And as I said earlier, they have been absolutely well informed and well involved in this debate. Mr. Boyle, your question is about our confidence in our predictions and risks. It is a fair question and one which I've already alluded to. We can be confident in our predictions of cost if we continue with the waste PPP. The price is effectively fixed and will only vary in limited circumstances. Most of the contract price is protected from inflation or indexation, so we know how much it will cost, we know it is affordable, and it will enable us to release money from our existing budgets. What we don't know, with the same degree of certainty, is the price of starting again. We don't know what alternatives will be offered, how much they will cost, and what conditions will be attached. We have come up with an informed estimate in our market proxy, but you are right to point out that we don't know for certain. It could be less or it could be more. The report sets out the key sensitivities around the value for money assessment, so members can see for themselves the impact of a change in interest rates or an increase in landfill tax. We also tested the impact of a 10% reduction in the market proxy and have demonstrated that the project would still remain value for money against all the key sensitivities. The project is the same project that was presented in 2010, but with an updated financial assessment. And as I've already said, there is a real risk in not proceeding. That will be a gamble that we will be able to find something else better and cheaper. I have to say, it's not our job to gamble with council taxpayers' money. Mr. Cooper, you make comments about the arrangements with Your Waste and the TECL. Decommissioning costs, the PIP and guaranteed minimum tonnages. The TECL principle is now enshrined in EU law and will shortly be enacted into UK law and is legally robust. The benefit has been highlighted separately so members can see the value of the project is value for money even without it. If the benefits were to be excluded from the Waste PPP project, it remains value for money in both nominal and MPV terms. Yes, the decommissioning costs have been omitted from the assessment. This is because they would be speculative, and it is highly likely that they will be offset by the residual value of the plant after 30 years, bearing in mind that this plant, the contract runs for 25 years, and it will be handed back to us with the potential to operate for another 5 years. In relation to the PIP or pending issues provision within the Council's budget, the PIP was set up to help manage the increases in expenditure on waste, including increases in landfill tax, and to help fund the anticipated price increases in the first years of the long-term service. The majority of the PIP is used today to underpin the waste service and continuing with AWRP. And that would also enable some 3.4 million to be released from the PIP to help fund other services. You also refer to risk around the lack of a parent company guarantee from Amy Sesper. This was discussed in 2010 and the position remains the same. We would not expect the Council to directly benefit from any form of guarantee or performance security from either Amy Sesper or the subcontractors. Instead, the Council will benefit from collateral warranties from the subcontractors which provide step-in rights and a direct duty of care. This reflects standard practice in these types of contracts. Finally, before responding to your direct question, I would like to comment on your assertion that there is no urgency to make a decision. This project has taken nearly 10 years to bring to completion. It is nearly 4 years since we last discussed this matter in full council. We cannot be accused of rushing into things. However, we do need to take this decision now on whether to proceed with this project. We have everything we need to make the decision and we should not procrastinate. The time is right now to decide. Your question is again to do with the risk of proceeding. I believe I have answered that in my early response. To repeat, the real risk is not to proceed. Mr. West, you made some comparisons to Sheffield and argued for combined heat and power over incineration. The issue of combined heat and power, I agree. Combined heat and power is a better solution but requires somebody to take the heat. Sheffield is city centre location with easy access to heat users, but even so it is typically very hard to deliver combined heat and power in the UK, and that is accepted by government. Only a few incinerators provide heat, but I agree that this needs to change. A condition of the planning consent is that Amy Sesper complete a heat market review before commissioning, and I personally will be pushing hard to ensure that waste heat is used more efficiently, and this plant has the ability to deliver waste heat. Emerging plans for growth in the Flaxby and Knaresborough areas provide the obvious focus for discussion. You are correct that a motion can only be proposed by a member, but your request has been noted. I will now address Nigel Adams MP's comments. Mr. Adams raises points about risk, and particularly risk of markets and programme slippage. He makes comments about technologies, incentives and taxation, which I would like to comment on further. AWRP is a mix of technologies. The debate is often focused on the back end, which is the energy from waste, but it includes highly advanced mechanical separation equipment and anaerobic digestion. AD is a government-promoted technology, and it will help deliver government objectives for renewable energy. The financial incentives attached to renewables are included in the business case, but at Amy Cesper's risk. Our assumption on taxation is that landfill tax will not go up in real terms, but this can only be prudent. It is wrong to say that the risks are greater than the government was prepared to support. The risk profile is consistent with other government-sponsored waste PFI projects, and in many cases it is in favour of the council. But government withdrew their financial support because they decided it wasn't necessary to fund the project to deliver government's targets for 2020. They didn't make any comment on local need, risk, or the business case assumptions. In fact, in removing waste infrastructure credits, government commented that the local authorities concerned may still choose to proceed with their projects. In answering Mr. Adams' question, I need to correct a statement that Mr. Adams makes more than once. To proceed with AWRP will not put other services at risk. To proceed with our waste costs and protect the council from having to cut other services in future to fund currently unknown costs of an alternative. Any risk of programme slippage is borne by Amy Cesper, and we will not pay for the service until it is available. The income from third parties used by Amy Cesper is to offset the operating costs, and therefore it is also their risk. Our risk is limited to the additional commercial waste from your waste, and as I've already mentioned, the project is shown to be value for money, even if this is ignored. His final question is, why should we go ahead? We would go ahead because it is the right thing to do in the long term, as I believe. I'd just like to address the points that have been raised by Mr. Andrew Jones, MP, Chairman. And he asks to defer the decision. I don't think in any sense deferment is an option today. It's a very straightforward, simple question, is does this project deliver on our objectives? Does it deliver value for money? And should we proceed to financial close? If we're not convinced of that argument, then the answer is no. I don't think there is room for an issue of deferment. With regards to Andrew Jones, once again, talks about AWRP presents cost certainty where the costs are unknown for other options. One must ask why these costs are unknown at a time when you are being asked to take a 1.4 billion decision. The costs should be known. They are we do understand those to a degree because we've done the soft market testing, and I've addressed that issue earlier, Chairman. I have to say is, clearly, Andrew Jones doesn't understand the numbers because he refers to 1.4 billion again, when in actual fact we're talking of 722 million. He actually talks about the reason, and I will read this out. I oppose the plans coming to Council tomorrow, the 24th of September. I hope that members may consider an alternative course of action to build confidence in the finances of the scheme. The AWRP was originally part-funded by the Private Finance Initiative Scheme. The government withdrew the PFI credits as there is enough energy from waste capacity in England. This is also true for capacity around our region. What worries me here is that we have an MP who probably doesn't understand his own government's waste strategy, because clearly what we have is a strategy for diverting residual household waste from landfill by 2020. Those targets are very onerous and are imposed on us by Europe. With it, the government feels, rightly or wrongly, is there is now sufficient capacity to actually hit those targets, and therefore, using the auspices of austerity, withdrew the offer of PFI credits to a number of authorities, but did say is, if you wish to proceed, you proceed. And therefore, as far as that is concerned, there is ample capacity. Where there isn't ample capacity, Chairman, and it actually comes from a paper by the Departments of Energy and Climate Change, is that in 2010, only 2% of all commercial and business waste was actually dealt with through energy recovery. And we're talking of something circa of over 50 million tonnes. The government believes there is still £5 to £6 billion worth of investment opportunity between now and 2020 for energy recovery, but that is mainly directed at the corporate, the business sector. I do believe is that with regards to this, all objective is that I think as an MP he's not being advised very well. One accepts that MPs are very busy people and they have to rely on advisors. If I was this gentleman, I'd be actually questioning the value of the advice he's being given. But as far as I'm concerned, Chairman, I don't think is that he fully understands the numbers, he doesn't understand the thrust of government policy, and he appears to be suggesting, which has been the suggestion of numerous people, and I have to say, as a resident and as an elected member for the Selby district, I find it is that rather challenging to put to my people in the Selby district that other people think it's great to have everybody else's waste transported into the Selby district for combustion. And I'd like to sort those people to actually come down to the Selby district and face some of my residents, because clearly they've got their fair share of generating energy at this moment in time, Chairman. That concludes my response, Chairman. I am aware is that the questioners have got the opportunity to come back with other questions.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive reply. It's very good. They do have the option now to come back with supplementary questions. Speakers, please remember that you have a maximum of 1 minute for a supplementary question. There will be no green light. The red light will just come on, and that is when you will finish on the microphone. Would the people who have supplementary questions please indicate now, or I'll go down the list as they came out in the first place. So, Sir Graham Hall, would you like to do a supplementary? No. Stephen Wright. Yes, sir, if you want to come forward then, please. I think the microphone might have been switched on.
Right. Hello, testing. Is it on? Thank you. Well, we predict that one of the hidden costs in all of this is the penalties. Bearing in mind that the proposed benefits are disputable but small, and there is a forecast overcapacity for incineration in the area and in the county as a whole, can you please explain what the penalties will be if sufficient waste is delivered to Allerton, and how you've taken account of these penalties in your projections?
Thank you. Miss Linda Potter, I was going to run through them all unless you want to do them individually. Thank you. Miss Linda Potter, do you want to have a supplementary, please?
I'm not particularly happy with your solution. I think we've been backfilling land for many years. Technologies move forward where you can capture the methane gas, you can line the land, and you can restore land. And I don't feel that your answer was quite what I expected.
Thank you very much. Noted that. He'll come back with a reply to you. Thank you. Mr. Robert Schofield, is it?
Thank you. Councillor Metcalfe has repeated the claim that ARP's technology will be good for 3 decades. Councillors, may I invite you to reflect on your own experiences of advances in computer, mobile phone or vehicle technology over the last 10 years, leave aside the next 25, in assessing the merit of that claim. Are there any contingency plans whatsoever, or any means of getting out of this contract in light of future technological advances?
Thank you. Mr. Paul Whelan.
It is important to be seen to do the right thing. The numbers have never been independently scrutinised, despite numerous requests to look at alternatives. A full procurement process is not required for such a review. There is no independent review, no members' working group report, and no report from the audit committee. Why?
Thank you. Mr. Laurie Boyle.
I'm somewhat confused by the numbers in this contract and the number of noughts. So let me just give a simplification of the figures in the form of a question, if I may. Who in this chamber would be prepared to give me £140 out of their own pocket, or, using Councillor Metcalfe's figures, £70 million out of their own pocket? And in return, I give them the assurance that in 25 years' time, they will possibly get back the principal. And if everything goes really, really well, and I've got all my forecasts right, and I've got all my numbers right, and all my assumptions have been included, I will give them back £1.70 for the risk that they have taken. Because that, gentlemen, is exactly the proposition that you have on the table today. And if you're not prepared to spend your £70 or your £140, why are you even considering spending the taxpayers' money in this way?
Thank you very much. Mr. Brian Cooper? No, you're okay. Mr. John West? Oh, I've passed Bob Singleton. Sorry there.
Okay. Councillor Metcalfe quite rightly said that when the government withdrew PFI funding for this scheme, they did not make any reference at all to the risk. But they did quite recently. Via Margaret Hodge and the Public Accounts Committee, they raised strong criticism regarding County Council handling of waste contracts, particularly warning against the well-documented risks and failures of precisely this type of long-term 25-year contract. Why is the Council not responding to that warning? Thank you, Chairman.
Very much. So, have we, Mr. Brian Cooper now, is it? Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Metcalfe, if we use your figure of £132 million profit on £728 million, it probably looks quite good. The snag is you don't see it for 20 years. It's not a good return. You allege that you've looked at alternatives. You have not looked at alternatives now. What was valid in 2010 is no longer valid. You claim certainty of future costs for 25 years. That's just not credible. Not credible at all. We all know we can't predict what will happen in 25 years. We can't predict 5 years. It underlines the whole credibility of this project. The fact that there is no members' working group report and no audit report also casts doubt as to whether the financial forecast would stand up to independent scrutiny. It's a very serious omission. So my question to all of you is, why in terms of real financial constraints are you willing to throw away savings of 32 million for the next 8 years against an unprovable forecast that there might be a very small saving in the very long term? Please think about it.
Thank you. Mr. John West? No. Oh, good.
Councillor Metcalfe, thank you for your detailed responses to the questions. At the time when the headline savings were 320 million, The £1 million being spent to repair the boundary walls and garden follies of the adjacent landowner's estate under the Section 106 agreement, although excessive and very questionable, seemed affordable at the time. Keeping with the headline figures rather than NVPs and that sort of stuff, now with 130 million left in the pot, nearly £200 million lower, this sum of £1 million not only still appears questionable, but now rather obscene, rather than just excessive. As it's paid by the county, I understand, rather than the contractor, has this sum been included in your current costs? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have Nigel Adams' report last, but I take it to your personal question, or is it a supplementary you've had formally?
Well, it'll be whichever. There's a question. I'm pleased to hear that Chris Metcalf is very supportive of not having more of these thrown into the Selby direction, and I would just like you to consider the implications about the capacity that is coming on stream either in Selby District or immediately adjacent to Selby District, so close in fact that all the transport delivering the waste has to come through Selby District to get to Ferrybridge. Ferrybridge is about to put on stream 400,000 tonnes a year on its FM1 plant, and it is just in the process of carrying out consultations on a second plant known as FM2 at the same site at Ferrybridge. In addition to that, you gave planning approval to the Southmore Centre at Kellingley Colliery just a short time ago, and that I think is about 280,000 tonnes. And in addition to that, there is a proposed plant at Dremel at Eggborough, which was a waste incineration plant, energy from waste, and that was about 100,000 tonnes. So my question to you is can you please make sure that you do understand the total capacity for waste incineration that is coming on stream into North Yorkshire or immediately adjacent to North Yorkshire?
Thank you very much. Councillor Metcalf, if you'd like to respond.
I'll try my best, Chairman. I may need a little assistance because I didn't quite get all the questions, but where I haven't got a response, I will probably ask the questioner to repeat it. Mr. Wright, penalties. As far as I'm aware, there are no penalties. The capacity that will be used under the contract that we have with Amy Sesper in the early years will use 60% of the capacity. We have, through the TECL process, said is that your waste will be able to supply that additional 40% through the use of commercial and industrial waste. There is more than sufficient commercial waste generated within North Yorkshire to actually meet that 60%, that additional 40% capacity. Over the lifetime of the contract, and as property numbers grow and waste arisings, purely and simply as an accumulative grow, the plant will become fully operational. Ms. Potter, it's not the answer that you wanted from me or you expected. I'm sorry, but government policy is against landfill. The European Union policy is against landfill, and the penalties are absolutely punitive. I didn't write the rules. I think it was Mr. Schofield referred to technology, mobile phones, etc., etc. The same could be said for the internal combustion engine. It is over 100 years old, and one has got to say is, what's happened to the internal combustion engine? It still burns petrol. It still produces gases out of the tailpipe. The only thing is the engine has become more and more efficient, because that's what technology does. And coming from Selby District, we have one of the largest coal-fired plants in Europe called Drax. And Drax has just undergone a few years ago, a major investment to actually replace its turbines with more efficient turbines. And therefore it generates more electricity. It is now going under a further form of investment, and that will be to actually go to biomass. So the fact is that you've got a structure doesn't mean to say is that the structure itself becomes outdated. It's what it does inside. And Amy Sesper will be carrying that risk and they will also be looking how they can get more efficiency out of that plant over the term of 25 years because it's in their best interests. Mr. Whelan, we seem to be doing the right thing. I'm just a little bit difficult, a bit of difficulty there. I'm assuming is that what you're saying is to do the right thing, elected members should have pored over this with a great degree of scrutiny. Well, I think is that at the outset there was a cross-party working group that was set up to actually establish that the objectives and the way forward was the right way forward. And that actually started the whole process going forward. All along, officers have taken advice from professional advisors, not only on technology, but on finance and on legal. But I will say is, as well, we've got a very competent team of officers who are very good at what they do and are very good negotiators and have kept not only the executive fully informed of the processes and the costs, etc., and we have challenged them vigorously with it. That has happened. And I can tell you from elected members, through seminars and presentations, they've had the same ability to challenge. Mr. Boyle, you made, I think you made a statement more than anything, and I believe is that I've responded those points in earlier statements. Mr. Singleton, you make reference to the Public Accounts Committee. I think is that what you're probably mistaking there is what the Public Accounts Committee was saying about PFI and the way that some authorities had managed it. And I think what was very clearly in Margaret Hodges' radar was the Norfolk debacle, because Norfolk proceeded with a contract and signed a contract before they even had planning permission. And the whole issue of the planning matter was called in. The Secretary of State promised to have an answer back to Norfolk by January or February of this year. By June of this year, it hadn't happened. And it was costing Norfolk a tremendous amount of money in the whole issue of foreign exchange values, etc., and they were having to pay out an enormous sum of money on a monthly basis to their contractor. They decided in June to pull the plug because there was still no response from the Secretary of State on planning. That decision has cost Norfolk County Council somewhere in the region of £32 million. We're much wiser here in North Yorkshire. As somebody said, we're Yorkshire folk and we're rather shrewd with our brass. And so what we did, we actually split the contract process. We actually put it into two parts. We went to commercial close first, and we agreed the way forward, and we agreed a contract with Amy Sesper. But then, all the risk transferred to Amy Sesper. Amy Sesper had to get planning permission, and once they got planning permission, they had to secure the funders. And that's where we are here today. They secured planning permission. That planning permission was a secure planning permission because it was challenged twice and found robust by government. And as far as the finances are concerned, that's what we're considering here today. So we are not in the same area that Margaret Hodge is alluding to. We have been more pragmatic about our approach. Mr. Cooper, you make reference to savings as profit, and I know you work for ASDA, and I spent most of my time in the retail world, and we do tend to talk about profit and loss. We're in local government here. This isn't making a profit. This is saving taxpayers' money. If it was a profit, we'd be handing it back to taxpayers as a bonus, as a dividend. This is helping protect the quality of our services over the years to come. So the money that is being saved isn't insignificant, and we all have always accepted in the early years, because it was one of the issues at the outset, is that this would be based on quality of the environmental impacts as opposed to price. So therefore we always accepted in the early years there would be an additional cost. But that cost has actually been profiled for and is covered within existing budgets. So if we had to go back to the short term, we could probably save money, yes, I wouldn't disagree. But we expose ourselves to all sorts of long-term risks and uncertainties. And you only have to look at where government is putting lines in the sand about what they expect in the future, and you've got to navigate past those. Mr. West makes reference to the monies to secure, I think, infrastructure works to the estate. There is also a sum of money of £840,000 over the life of the project for landscape and cultural improvement for those communities living within 3.5 kilometres of the site to actually bid into. Those are part of 106 monies. They are not part and parcel of the contract. They sit outside the contract. Clearly, Nigel must be on the other end of the telephone, because I'm sure Howard isn't speaking on behalf of Nigel without conferring. And I'm highly delighted is that Nigel is concerned about the amount of waste that could be potentially burned in the Selby district. And I hope he's going to do all that he can to assist us improving the infrastructure within the Selby district, because what you allude to is absolutely right, is it will have transport implications on some very narrow roads and some very small communities. But the question that you posed was, are we going to take into consideration the total capacity that is available? Well, I think is that, one, we've got to understand what that total capacity is. Where AWRP here, that we're proposing today, takes unprocessed residual household waste, that is a major benefit. If we look at what has got planning permission, it is mainly for business and commercial waste, namely wood, and also for processed waste, household residual waste. So somebody somewhere has got to convert that unprocessed waste into a waste fuel block, which then has got to be transported from somewhere in North Yorkshire to Ferry Bridge, which brings in the additional whole issue around sustainability. So yes, we have considered the capacity issue, but in particular relationship to AWRP, it's not relevant. I think that addresses them all, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Metcalfe, and thank you very much to the gentleman and lady who came and asked the questions. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda is a report and recommendation of the Executive, and I call on Councillor Chris Metcalfe to move the recommendation.